It's a Friday evening, and I'm sure you guys would be occupied with so many things, but thank you so much for checking in and being a part of this session. Uh, so firstly, quick intro about the Product Folks. So Product Folks is a voluntary driven community. So it's a community for product enthusiasts, folks from in the tech and who wants to learn more about product. So we try to have different type of initiatives coming in. So TPF as a community has been the largest community in Asia. So from past few months we are trying to grow the community in the North America region as well, with a couple of initiatives that we are trying to bring in now. So yeah, this is about the product folks. And just quick intro about me. Me and Manish will be the co-host for today. So I'm Akash here. I'm currently pursuing Masters of Engineering Management at Duke University. And yeah, over to you, Manish.
Hey, hi. I would like to welcome you all again to this event. As I told, we will be the host for today's event. You, you know, I'm currently pursuing my master's in engineering management program at Duke University. Um, yep, I would like to ask our speakers Lorik and Gokul just introduce themselves to our audience too.
Go ahead, Gokul. I saw you
Yeah,
unmute yourself.
that's okay. Thanks, Lorik. So my name is Gokul, and I am also an MEM candidate at Duke University. So my background is in computer science and entrepreneurship. Super happy to be here.
Yeah, just like Gokul, I'm pursuing my master's here at Duke University, and I'm also from a CS background. Yeah, I'm excited to be here and sharing all my learnings with you all.
Awesome. That's great. Quick intro, but yeah, let's go. I think end of the session we'll know each other more well. So just quick agenda about today's event. So we'll have Gokul and Lorik talk about their experiences so far in the United States, product management in particular, their experiences working at Microsoft and Amazon, some tips and tricks on how we can we can go about cracking PM interviews at those companies and in FAANG companies in general. And then we'll uh, keep it open for you guys to ask questions by end of this event. Does that sounds good, Lorik and Gokul? Perfect. Let's quickly dive in. Before that, I would like to also thank the team altogether. So we have Manish, we have Alan, Rachita, we have Naman and Prithvi, who have been extensively helping us with all the all the activities that we have planned so far, and also with the next set of events altogether. So thank you guys. And yeah, let's quickly dive into the questions. So before getting into PM interview as such, like one thing what I or the the audience want to understand is what made you excited about product management as a whole. Like what made you feel product management is something I want to do. So probably Lorik can go first, and then Gokul can pick it up.
Yeah, sure. Coming from a CS background, I worked as a software developer at Cisco, and we used to build machine learning models at scale on distributed systems. And I had no clue about product management. In fact, I knew zilch about the role uh, while I was in undergrad. In fact, I was just interviewing for SW roles and SD roles. But while working on projects, I worked with a PM, and I found his job fascinating because we used to just listen to whatever the requirements were and then build them out, but never knew why we are building what we are building and for who we are building it. And shadowing him and then understanding what he's doing every day, and essentially like looking at how he's interacting with various stakeholders to bubble up what the concerns of the customer are, really got me interested into PM. And obviously, PM is like a nice segue into entrepreneurship. And the end goal of that was I want to start something myself. So PM was like a way to get there. So yeah, that's one of the reasons why I've gotten interested in this field.
Awesome, that's great. And Gokul?
Yep, that's a great story, Lorik. I guess like my story is a bit of a reverse funnel to yours. So I actually come from entrepreneurship into product management. So post my degree with computer science and engineering, I used to run my own deep tech startup focused on computer vision back in India. So the pandemic wasn't like really kind to us. So I eventually decided to do my master's degree. So to be honest, like I was like super passionate about like getting there, like talking to consumers, gathering their insights and developing into an actual product and iterating and co-creating with them. So when I was looking at what corporate job description fits, which is like very similar to entrepreneurship, product management was the closest job description that I could find. So yeah, that's what like drives me towards product management, and that's how I landed here. Yeah.
That's great story, guys. Like two different types of stories. That's really nice. So like I think at this point you guys realized product management was something you guys wanted to do. But how did you go about actually building those skill sets that are required for most of it? Like let's talk about hard skills or soft skills. But how did you go about it? Like how did you prepare yourself with the skill sets that most companies or at least an individual with PM skills are required with?
To put it like this, I think there's not really like a particular, I mean, there are particular set of skills and competencies that are required to be successful as a PM. But at the end of the day, as a PM, you're responsible for anything and everything for the product to be successful. Let me give you an example. Deepinder Goyal started Zomato. He delivered the order. He also took orders. He also made sure that all of the customers are like able to see menu cards of like all the restaurants, because that was the first MVP. The MVP was just handing out menu cards. Now delivering the order is not the description and not the job description of a PM at Zomato, but he did anything and everything to get it successful, right? So at the end of the day, the job can be a little dirty, and it is very dirty, in fact. But a PM does anything and everything to get the job done and to make the product successful. Having said that, I think there are a specific set of skills that really help the product manager become successful in their role. And I think for me, the most important skills would be listening and really having deep empathy for customers, so that you can essentially think about the problems and your move to solve for them. Apart from that, there are more important skills that like every PM should focus on. And obviously the most important ones there are prioritization and execution. Prioritization is one of the most important skills, in my opinion, for a PM, because that's one of the hardest things to do once you're working at big tech or in companies that are fairly large. Execution again is also an important skill, because while everyone can think about can go through the design thinking process and think about like what are the problems and how to come up with solutions, it is really the job of the manager to product manager to see end-to-end execution of that particular vision that he has, and make sure that all that they have for the customer in mind is actually shipped to the customer, and they can quickly iterate on that and quickly provide to the customer. So yeah, these would be like fairly the important skills. Apart from that, the hard skills would be understanding tech, but that's not really like a hard requirement. I think if you have a tech background, it's a plus. You can ramp up pretty quickly in technology companies, but it's not like a hard and fast rule. More importantly, you need to be creative. You need to think about how to break down problems very easily, and you need to think according to first principles. And I think that is what makes like a PM very successful. Not saying we're there, but we're trying to get there.
Perfect. And Gokul, you want to take a stab at that?
Yep. Yeah, thinking about hard skills or tech skills that you may need for product management. So when I decided that I need to do my master's degree and I wanted to get into product management, I felt kind of like safe or sorted in terms of tech skills because I was coming from a computer science background. And I had like fairly decent work experience working with ML systems and like basic computer infrastructure. So I felt a little comfortable in that side. So what really like made me anxious was like the soft skills part, like how do I actually empathize with consumers? How do I communicate that to the different teams? So I've been like, I'm a big fan of reading nonfiction. So the first thing that I did was like, I got my hands on as many articles and books that I could find regarding product management just to get the theory right. So it really made me like even more anxious, to be honest. So I'm not like I consider myself an introvert, and this job required a lot of talking and collaborating with a lot of people, a lot of firefighting and stuff like that. So once I figured out like what are the kind of soft skills that I need, and I got my theory right before coming to the US, I did a bit of a stint as a product management intern in like another company just to make sure that what I was thinking about product management was right in a company setting. To be honest, like it was fun, but once I was able to like go and work in a larger organization such as Microsoft, it was like a completely different product management experience. So in terms of like soft and hard skills, like completely required for it's very subjective to each and every organization. But as Lorik put it, the overall skills are like empathy, communicating requirements, understanding consumer insights and stuff like that. So the way I went about doing it is like that, like I read articles and took courses, and yeah, that's how I went about it.
Yeah. So that was quite informative. Since we're talking about skills and coursework, so my next question would be, since most of us here are all master students pursuing masters in from different backgrounds, how did masters the coursework in your master's program help you to get into product management? Like maybe the courses or the extra effort that you did apart from courses, or exactly like what exactly or what courses helped you get into product management?
I think I agree with Gokul. Most of my preparation in terms of hard skills came from my undergrad, especially all data heavy courses that we had taken, machine learning, deep learning, all of those, understanding statistics, basic probability. That really helps you to analyze data, understand the basic stuff that is required to be successful on the job. Also, other hard skills like learning how to just query databases using SQL and all other databases, supremely important. And I think that's like a must in every PM job. During masters, I think the most important courses were actually the ones that caused a change in or a shift in the mindset. Essentially thinking along multiple dimensions and having that multifaceted thinking, right? That really developed through master's courses. And I think even if you're not doing a master's, there's like a certain way to approach problems to really think along multiple dimensions. If you go through the entire design thinking process, you'll essentially know how to empathize with customers, how to stand in the shoes of customers, and then figure out like how they're feeling about a particular problem, and then how to work backwards from there to essentially like provide them the best solution that is going to help them achieve their goals, right? So in terms of the courses that I took at Duke, I think the most important courses for me in terms of cracking the interview was a competitive strategies. It's a course that teaches you how to essentially navigate situations in the industry. That really helps you to have structured thinking and thinking along different frameworks and thinking along different dimensions. And on the job, I think the most important skill is comes from like the courses like design thinking, which essentially take you through the entire process of ideating, right from the customer's pain point to figuring out what their problems are, certain solutions for them, and then finally defining metrics to measure success and constantly iterating through that loop.
Cool. Yeah, that is again quite informative. Gokul, do you want to add something?
Yes, I agree with whatever Lorik said, and like I have like a very similar perspective regarding courses that helped me from Duke University. So the most useful course for me, and like it had the most transferable like thought points, is competitive strategies. For people from Duke, you would know that like it's handled by Professor Tony. I also love his marketing course as well. So both these courses give me a lot of mental models to think about and like analyzing, especially technology companies and how to analyze their context. So even in interviews, when you're given like a technical contest and you're given a problem solving question, the course called Competitive Strategies really helped me in like how to break their problem down and how you can like look at it from like different frames, and how do you look at the larger picture, how do you look at the immediate solution for it. So I guess like competitive strategies like is super important for me in terms of like approaching product design and product analysis questions, or I mean, if they're asking that in interview, that also comes up in your day-to-day job as well, for most of the PM jobs. So that course was super helpful. And of course, marketing. So marketing course helped me in having a bit of like greater empathy towards consumers and how do the consumers see technology products, and how do technology companies go about attracting their eyeballs. So these two courses were like super important for me, which helped me with PM.
That's great. So since we spoke about coursework, apart from the coursework during your studies, do you think anything else that helped you, like in terms of the projects or let's say club activities or anything of that sort, where you felt like, I mean, you could talk about those things during your interviews or put up on your resume or portfolio or anything of that sort?
I'm not sure how many people are from Duke on this call, but if they haven't taken the design thinking course, Stanford has a good one. Even Duke has a good one, but Stanford has a great one. So you can just take that course. Regarding your question, Akash, about activities in terms of clubs and all of that, I think the single most important activity that you can do is actually figure out what current user problem exists and how you would solve for it, and actually build a product ground up. That would be the most important thing you would do to essentially go through that entire product management journey. And the plus is that you can show it off. And if you hit on gold, you have a company. So I think that is the most important aspect of doing extracurriculars. Clubs are great. They're a nice way to pick up transferable skills, leadership, communication, and also coordinating with stakeholders, running basic timelines and all of that through project management. But I think the most important thing would be to actually solve problems. Pick up a problem, talk to people, build a solution, validate it, iterate on it. I think that is the most important thing.
In my perspective, I believe that, to be honest, I have like never been like engaged in like any sort of clubs or activities, with both in my undergrad as well as in my master's. So how I went about doing that is that I usually try to stay on top of like whatever is happening in big tech, and I usually try to have like a subjective opinion regarding like the technology products that and whatever tech news out there is happening. And in terms of like preparing for the actual job in itself, I try myself to have as much as like one-on-one conversation with actual PMs out there in the industry, and try to validate my my approach, my perspectives, and how I think about the products in their company and stuff like that. So this is not about like just going and like asking them for referrals or just asking about job and job interviews in itself. I just like try, to be honest, I love to talk about like successful PMs out there and understand how they are thinking about a problem, how they are thinking about like a particular big news or like big product that is currently happening out there. So that's what I did, like apart from the coursework and the actual individual prep.
Same, not been involved in any club activities.
I think is that one of the things we should do to get into big firms?
No comments.
I'm not saying I wasn't involved in any club activity before, but not in my master's journey. Yeah.
Got it. Makes sense. I think we
Also,
spoke
that really
a lot
helps. That really helps. What Gokul mentioned, talking to PMs, shadowing them. I think that's like the most important aspect as well.
Yeah, shadowing PMs, and I think trying to see small problems on a day-to-day basis and trying to see how we can approach that, I think is a best thing which we can approach. I think, yeah, we spoke a lot about how you guys went about product management as a career. I think we can now slowly dig deeper into PM interviews at FAANG. So first thing first, like I think it year back you were in our position where you're trying to apply to multiple PM opportunities, internships, and roles in different companies. So just want to know, how did you go about it? Where did you hit Microsoft or Amazon? Where exactly, or when exactly was that? Just want to know on how you went about the whole application process.
Gokul, you want to go first? I think your timeline was like before mine, I guess.
Sure, yeah, of course. To be honest, like I started like super early. So I started applying around like September, towards the end of August and September, as soon as I came here within like a few weeks. So I made sure that my resume was honed. I talked to like Duke Career Services and a few PMs out there and made sure my resume was reflective of what the big tech is looking for in terms of like a PM intern candidate. And apart from that, of course, you will need to tailor resumes when you're applying to these companies to make sure that your keywords match with job description. So my initial strategy was to get as many rejects as possible from big tech as fast as possible. So I started applying to all these big companies, FAANGs, Microsoft, Netflix, Netflix doesn't have internship. I mean, all these big companies, and get rejects as soon as possible so that I can keep that aside and like go about with tier 2 companies. But I was fortunate enough to get shortlisted early on, and the whole interview process took about a couple of months before I actually got my offer in late November. So that's how I went about with my process. And yeah, that's my timeline.
I think I have something similar. I started applying for jobs, internships, towards the end of August. And I think I applied for the Amazon internship sometime in October, but I interviewed with them only in January. And I got an offer with them only in Jan. I think I followed the similar process, right? I didn't look at rejects as something that's going really wrong. I think that's like a way to understand that companies are actively recruiting. So I think I applied to about 110 roles and got rejected by 85, 85 or 90-ish, and interviewed with like 5 or 6 until the last round, and then got rejected. And probably got like, I think, 2 offers in November, but I got Amazon in Jan, so I decided to go ahead with Amazon. Apart from that, I think the process is similar. My resume was pretty much to go back when I started applying in August. I had already sent it to a couple of PMs, probably in June, July, before coming to the US to actually see if everything's fine, if it's following the right format and all of that. And then start applying. It's about spreading the net as wide as possible. It's just like you're fishing. That's all.
Cool. So yeah, since we already started talking about Microsoft and Amazon in specific, like can we all just know how did you start channelizing your preparation, and what was the structure of interview once you got the call back from Amazon and Microsoft?
Amazon has a very different interview process compared to all the other companies that hire for product management. So I'll first talk about another company, UiPath, I interviewed with and got an offer from them. So the standard interview process was you have a recruiter call. Once the recruiter call is done, I had a product design round. Then I had a product strategy round. And the third round was essentially a system design round. And the fourth round was a behavioral round. Each of these rounds have like specific ways to prepare for. And I think most of the companies, including Microsoft, follow this sort of, or at least these types of rounds. Amazon, on the other hand, had a totally different approach. They would ask you product related questions through behavioral interviews. Their questions would be like, tell me about a time you created a metric and how did you measure a change in it? And other questions would be something like, okay, should Amazon enter the restaurant business? So you would think of it very strategically, how you would want to enter into that game. Should they even enter into that game? You would think about other things like, okay, what is their moat? What is the competitive advantage they have? How would they leverage their other businesses to help in this particular business? And really thinking along different dimensions, right? So yeah, the standard process would be product design and behavioral for internships, not more in general. But I think FAANG companies minus Amazon ask you product analytics, product design, product execution as well. Amazon, however, sticks to product strategy and behavioral only. So I think Gokul can add more in with respect to what interviews go on.
Yes, for Microsoft, there were about totally 6 rounds. So I had my initial screening call with like a PM. So, I mean, I was hoping that it would be just a technical recruiter round, but it was a PM. So he had some technical product questions for me, like the usual boilerplate ones, such as like, what's your favorite product? How would you improve it? It was a 45-minute call and we were discussing that. Then after that, I had about 3 weeks until my loop interviews. That's what they call, like Microsoft has like 4 back-to-back interviews on the same day. So for that, I had 3 weeks and I utilized the 3 weeks to prepare specifically for product design and product analysis, analytics question types. So I talked to a lot of Microsoft PMs to understand what the interview process would look like. And they said like most of the emphasis would go on product design. And that's how it turned out to be honest. And I tried to have mock interviews with a few PMs and with my peers as well. So of the 4 core interviews that I had, like there were a mix of behavioral questions as well as product design questions. There were, and to be honest, it was very subject to each and every interviewer. So one of the interviewer did not even dig into any of the product questions. They were just interested in my resume and my work ex. They just dig deep into that. And one of the interviewers just straight away jumped into a product design question, and the interview like bleeded on to like 1.5 hours. We were just like debating over how we would go about executing that. And the other interviews were a mix of like product sense and like product analytics. Then after these 4 rounds of interviews, after a week, Microsoft got back to me and I actually had a round with the actual recruiter. So it was more about like a formal call, just you discussed whatever needs to be done, and I got the offer. So I guess that would be the case for most of the PM interns interviewing with Microsoft. You would have at least 5 rounds. I've been told that some of the interviewers did not have the 6th recruiter round. So that's how I went about after I got the Microsoft call for preparation.
Okay.
So
yeah, Lalit.
I think I had like a similar process for all the other companies except for Amazon. Amazon had an online assessment that was shared first. That's essentially a 2.5-hour simulation. They put you through product management scenarios or program management scenarios, where you essentially try to answer questions that come up on a screen, just like how a PM would. You're presented a situation, how do you navigate it? And then you go through that entire simulation, which lasts about 2.5 hours. Post that, you have something called a loop interview, which is essentially 2 rounds back-to-back for internship and 4 back-to-back for full-time. So the loop interviews essentially are behavioral interviews, and they dig into your product knowledge and your product experience. Also, they might ask you questions related to product strategy.
That's actually nice. But we are also interested to know how did you go about your preparation once you got the call? Like, what are the resources that you referred, specifically to product design, maybe or system design or product strategy. So there'll be multiple rounds, as you just said, like for Amazon and Microsoft specifically. So how did you go about the preparation with respect to resources with these rounds? What resources or what books or whatever the resources you referred, if you can share them with us, it would be helpful.
I like to read Shreyas Doshi's Twitter. I think that was like the best way to prepare for me. But books wise, I think I liked I'm forgetting the name. Decode and Conquer. Yeah, Decode and Conquer, I think, was a much better book than Cracking the PM Interview, in my opinion, because it really taught you how to attack and break down problems. Cracking the PM Interview is fairly verbose, but it puts you too much into framework thinking. Over time, I realized that it's not the resources, it's how much you're actually like trying to solve problems, and mock interviewing with people that actually like helps you more, because you can come up with frameworks on the go when you start doing that again and again and again and again. You don't need to actually follow anything that's there in the book. So Cracking the PM Interview forces you to think along the dimensions of certain frameworks. But I think that is not really very helpful. What is more helpful and what will make you stand out as a candidate is you coming up with your own set of frameworks. And that will happen if you interview enough, if you mock interview enough, and if you think differently, right? Like, and how that will happen is like you just like go out there, read what's happening in the industry, draw parallels very easily. Look at product gurus like Shreyas Doshi, and read their Twitter. Right? It's like a gold mine. His Twitter is like a gold mine for PM.
Gokul, do you want to add some resources, or how was your
Yes.
preparation?
In my perspective, similar to Lorik, I did not stick to any book or any particular framework that was suggested. So once I got my Microsoft call, I read a lot of blogs written by product managers of how their experience was with approaching or tackling these questions in all these big tech companies. So apart from that, I largely utilized a website called pmexercises.com. It's very similar to Stack Overflow, but for PM questions. So people come there and post questions that was recently asked in all these big tech companies, and product managers currently working in that tech company or people aspiring to be in that company come and answer those questions, and other PMs rank those answers based on their detail. So I really am a big fan of that website, and I utilized it so much, and it helped me a lot. So I try to filter it based on the questions asked specifically for Microsoft, and I tried my best to work out all the questions out there for which are tagged under internship. That's how my preparation went. I'll post the link of the website here. Yeah. Oh, thank you, Bhavika.
Sure. That's great. So like, since we're talking about interviews, I think there are some things which you might have worked on to stand out during those interviews, right? Probably like you would have done a lot of research on some of the products in that particular company, or let's say you would have prepared a deck or anything of that sort. What were some of the things which you guys worked on, or something which you felt like this might be something that would stand out during my interview with them, and how did you go about that?
Nothing in particular, to be honest. I had a detest for like a lot of Microsoft products. I hate like I always prefer Google Docs over Microsoft Word, and like using Zoom call over Teams. And it was, and I did not have just to catch their eye attention. I had like proper opinion, and I have done my analysis, and I had like proper suggestions to improve them. So that is one thing that I did, like maybe like I'm not sure if it's out of the box or something. I did, which was like a huge talking point in my interview, and my interviewers really liked that I was able to take the conversation in that direction, and we had like a really productive discussion. So understanding the company's products and how they could like actually improve and have your own subjective, unique opinions regarding how they could improve could be like super useful when you're like just talking to the person from the company.
I think I sort of agree with Gokul. In fact, I didn't go in with the mindset that, I'm going to like and talk about all the products that this company has just because I'm interviewing with them. Had strong opinions, but they were loosely held and well researched, so that I don't come off as trying to simply people please in an interview. Just because I'm interviewing with Microsoft doesn't mean my favorite products are Microsoft products. In fact, even today, I will get on a call with Gokul and fight with him about how Teams sucks. But yeah, the point is, you shouldn't calibrate your answers based on the company that you're interviewing for, you should be passionate about it really when you're talking about it, because only when you're passionate about something, you'll have a strong opinion. And you should also be willing to budge, right? You should be willing to like acknowledge certain things in the interview. The interview is not unidirectional. It's a conversation. You're going to be working with that person. And that person is trying to see if their mental wavelength and your mental wavelength is going to align. So essentially you need to like be able to like navigate that interview like a conversation, not like, oh, I'm here to talk about this. I like the products because I'm applying to this company, and I hate your competitors' products because I want to work for you.
Right. Yeah, that definitely makes sense. And I think, yeah, most of us should go about approaching, particular companies, interview that way as well. Coming to like particular interviews or particular type of interviews, right? Let's say like most of us or most of the companies start with having a initial 30-minute or 45 minutes recruiter screening round, right? So that's what happened with you. At least for Lorik, it was an assessment, but for Gokul, it was a recruitment screening round. So what are some of the tips and tricks tips you would suggest on how to actually talk to recruiters? Let's say they ask you to introduce yourself and they want to see your interest for that. Like, how did you go about that then?
I mean, the answer that I'm going to give you is like, you might have heard it like as many times whenever you talk to anyone who has interviewed ever. So they already have your resume and they don't want you to repeat the fact that's already in your resume. So they are there to just to see the person who's behind the resume and what their actual story is. These are just highlights, right? So make sure you give them, I mean, it doesn't have to be catchy. I call it as remember me stories. Make sure that you are being candid and honest and they remember you post the interview. So just being candid and honest and being like, as Lorik said, it's a conversation. Making sure that you are the right candidate for the role that you are interviewing for, and you are the honest self that you are presented in your resume. Yeah, that should be more than enough for introducing yourself in those interviews.
Yeah, just be yourself and be honest to whatever you want to do. Yeah.
And to add on to that, like get to the point quickly, right? Like, yeah, you like to climb trees. Yeah, you like to climb mountains. Yeah, the interviewer doesn't want to hear all that. Get to the point quickly. Yeah, I have this. I bring this to the table. I can work with you. That's more than enough for them to hear.
Yeah, we all agree for that, right? So as we spoke about different rounds like product strategy, product design, and technical rounds. So talking about specifically about technical round and product design, how actually these rounds go. What exactly is expected out of these, and about the preparation specifically for product design when we talk, because getting into PM and product design, we think that's very important for everyone to know about it in and out of product design. So how do we start preparing for it, and what exactly is expected in the interview?
Yeah, and probably like you can talk on the grounds of Amazon and Microsoft specific, like what helped you there.
Yeah, sure. You want to go first, Gokul?
No, Lorik, go ahead.
Okay, yeah. So I'm not going to like say that I'm different. I started with circles. That's the framework that I used. But I quickly graduated away from it, right? I learned about it in the Decode and Conquer book. But once I did one mock, everyone figured out that I was using that framework. The point is you start doing mocks enough to understand that there are different ways to solve a problem. Product design is essentially looking at how you can think from customer's perspective to redesign something, improve something, build something new. Why would you do that? Because there's a current problem. Who would you do that for? You would try to do that for a large number of people with least effort. That's the easiest way to solve this problem. And then what would you measure again to see whether your product is successful, your feature is successful, or your product is going to fail? What would you measure to see that your product fails? Because if you measure that, you know that your product is going to fail. You can calibrate against that to then improve your product. So very few interviewees or interviewers will even come across candidates who will use things like countermetrics in their design questions, product design questions. But I think they're very important because like they really help you validate the efficacy of your idea. Now to specifically talk about Amazon, Amazon will test you on only one thing, that is customer obsession. Because Amazon's principle is do everything right for the customer, no matter how many resources you burn. Customer obsession is a real thing. They will run a race to the bottom to please the customer. So if that is the goal of that company, then you calibrate your answer along those lines, not exactly to do what they're saying, but along those lines, right? So you want to essentially say the right things that they want to hear. What I mean here is you also have to be very customer obsessed, because that's the idea that they're emulating. And product design will start from thinking about the customer. With respect to all other companies, internships, I think they're a little lenient with you using circles. And even if you do use it and they know you're using the framework, it's still fine. But I would say like don't bank on it too much, because now PM is like a really hot job. Everyone tends to use circles, gravitate away from that framework and come up with your own.
I'm absolutely on the same page as Lorik. So try not to like stick to any framework, let it be circles or whatever McDowell says in cracking the PM interview. So, but while approaching a product design question, so there are a few common sense logical steps that you might see in all these frameworks. So that is you most probably start with scoping down the problem, and you go about like why you are building it, who you are building it for, what is the easiest way that you could build it, and how would you measure success. So these are the usual ways that you would go for. Talking specifically about Microsoft ironically obsesses about user experience and accessibility, how easy it is for them, for the users to use their products. So if you're getting interviewed for Microsoft, it is always a good idea to, they have a lot of documentation out there, which are honestly super fun to read regarding how they build like products which are super accessible to a large set of masses out there, and like how they go about understanding design principles and designing for a billion users. So they obsess over user experience, and they expect you to have a bit of strong opinions on how the product should look and feel like, and how closely it matches with Microsoft's design principles. So yeah, that's how it was. That was my subjective experience with product design questions while interviewing for Microsoft. In one of my interviews, I was specifically asked to design a particular feature for Microsoft Teams. That feature had already existed in the Microsoft Teams video calling feature. That the particular feature that I was asked to design was existing for years in Google Meet and Zoom. So make sure to be candid and say it out loud that if you're going to copy a feature from another application that already exists in the market, and make sure how it is like tailored to whatever product that you're currently, or feature that you're currently designing for. So yeah, like try to have a proper mental mindset towards approaching these questions. Don't try to force yourself and stick to any framework.
Makes sense. That's good insights. And like coming to the technical knowledge, right? So Lorik, coming in with you came in with 3 years of experience with some software background. Gokul with your own entrepreneurship experience. How important was technical knowledge for both of you, especially for interviewing for big tech like Microsoft and Amazon?
It just to answer your question, it just gives you like an added advantage. Understanding how to write queries, not having to learn SQL, understanding basic distributed systems, basic computer science concepts. This really like helps you stand out, I would say, given the number of people applying for PM roles. Having said that, it doesn't really restrict anyone else from any other background to apply for PM roles. It just gives you an added advantage, and the fact that you can grasp concepts quickly, and you can start contributing sooner. If you are looking for specific resources in system design, I can point you to a YouTube channel, Gaurav Sen. He's by far the best system design guru on YouTube. I think anyone, a non-CS background person, can like easily learn about system design concepts and computer science through his videos. He uses analogies like pizzas to explain very basic concepts and very advanced concepts as well. So that's one. Apart from that, there are like a few basic things that every PM needs to understand. Statistics 101, probability 101, SQL, databases. All of these can be picked up from several websites like Geeks for Geeks. There's W3 Schools, Tutorials Point. There's YouTube. So you can pick up all these concepts from here. You don't have to be like a guru in all of these, but you need to basically be able to communicate in the language of technical folks, developers, architects, and tech leaders, because that's when you gain real trust with engineering to execute and build a feature. So essentially, though technical backgrounds help people, it's not that non-tech people cannot break into PM. All they have to do is just catch up, and playing catch up is pretty easy given how pervasive content is today on YouTube and all the other websites.
So in my subjective experience, again, technical skills is not a prerequisite. It has absolutely been a value add for the companies that I had interviewed with. So the moment you finish and like talk about how your product would look like, there's always a question of how you would go about. They just wanted to have your opinion regarding how you would go about technically building it. So just having the concept of how like technical blocks work, like what's the concept of shared code, how these products that you're thinking about actually work behind. You don't need to have to know the exact specific of it, but just having the technical logic of what's happening behind is it might become essential. So yeah, that's my opinion. And apart from that, in terms of technical skills, in my internship, like having a good hand over SQL absolutely comes in handy. You're not expected to code, but it's a fun thing to do in your PM these things. For example, you will need to work with a lot of data whenever you're writing product requirements or whatever feature you are building. You will need to substantiate your assumption with data. And once you have a good handover SQL, you don't need to run behind developers to get that particular point of data. If you know what you're doing, you can just get in. And it just makes you, in my opinion, a better PM. Yeah.
Got it. And from an interview point of view, like, did they ask like a lot of technical questions, or did you, at some point of the interview, you had technical specific questions, or it was just like, you used whatever knowledge you guys had to just talk about it during the interviews?
So I think this is a bias. We're asking a person who's come from the technical background, has worked for 3 years. They obviously know a little to answer it, but I would still say that it's possible to play catch up, if that's the question. But they don't really test you on very, very deep technical concepts in interviews. They'll ask you to write simple queries. They'll ask you how you would communicate things to someone who doesn't understand tech. Explain blockchain to your grandmother, or cloud computing to your 5-year-old kid. How would you do all of this? Especially big tech. If you're joining big tech, you need to be able to understand like these technologies, and you need to be able to communicate them very cogently and very concisely to developers, or be able to talk their language, or people who don't understand tech that well, on both sides, right? And if you aren't able to do that, then big tech would be slightly harder because big tech really dabbles in all spaces. They are in cloud computing, they are in e-commerce, they're everywhere. They're just like an octopus, right? Tentacles spreading everywhere. So you need to be able to understand all domains in tech, systems, ML, e-commerce, whatever. Like you get the gist of it. Having said that, don't really prepare just for FAANG interviews. Prepare in general to shore up all your capabilities: product design, system design, product strategy, product execution, product analytics. We didn't prepare just for certain set of interviews. We prepared for all kinds of interviews. And again, spread the net wide. And if you land big tech, then you can just pull out certain tricks from your arsenal, right? And then use them.
Yeah. In terms of like technical, how technical that it might get in an interview, like in my subjective experience, so it has been like high level. So they don't expect you to actually go in and like talk about how the code would be implemented or something like that. So for example, if they're asking you to design a whiteboard or something like that, they would like at least need you to have some opinion regarding how the technical blocks on the back end would look like. You obviously need to have some sort of canvas infrastructure going on. You need to have, if people are collaborating there, you need to have infrastructure for that. And you will need a mechanism to lock the content so that people are not writing on each other and something like that, just to understand the logic of the how technical blocks come together for a product or a feature. And having that sense would be super helpful while you're interviewing for big tech.
Yeah, and I think that really comes from understanding systems.
That is correct.
What's the front end? What's the back end looking like? What is the database schemas? Do I need to add a load balancer to balance all the requests coming in and all of that? So you would need basic understanding of systems, and I think Gaurav Sen will really help with that. So I think Akash has shared that in the Zoom chat. I think that will really help.
Yeah, well, that was quite informative about a bit about system design and product design and technical rounds. Now moving on to another important interview round is that's behavioral round, right? So we all know there are people with experience and there are freshers. So in behavioral round, we all know everyone expects a story of a situation. So everyone will not have a story for every situation. So how do we go about that? Or basically in all on how do we prepare for behavioral round? Even if we have a story, how do we convey it to the recruiters? So how do we go about that?
So I can tell you how I go about this. I introduce characters, talk about them in first person, then introduce some conflict in between, and then talk about resolution. That really helps tie the entire idea of a behavioral round together, right? The point is you're saying a story, but if you stick to frameworks, I think Lewis Lynn provides digs as a framework, dramatizing something and then indicating the alternatives going through with what you did, and then finally summarizing it. And I think there's one more popular framework called STAR, but these are very mechanical. When you're really saying answers using these frameworks, it will alert the interviewer that you're trying to bottle up different aspects of your answer or bucket them. So what I have used and what has worked for me is, again, talking in first person, introducing the characters, introducing some conflict that occurred, and how did you resolve them, where the resolution is the most important, like the outcome of the resolution, not exactly how you resolved it, but what happened once it was resolved. That is the most important bit. Overall, I think the behavioral rounds are the most important rounds for internships, because generally most companies are going to test you on that round and product design. So it's not like get your stories in order, but look back, write down every single experience that you've had that you think is substantial or non-substantial, and think about it very deeply. I think I've had most learnings with not with a job experience, but with an experience of actually fighting with the bureaucracy here in the United States for my SSN. And that story really helps me connect with the interviewer, and we laugh at it towards the end of the interview. In fact, in all of my interviews, I've used that story, and every time I use that, the interviewer, even if I don't get through that company and I don't cross that round, we definitely connect on LinkedIn, and we form good relationships and good friendships. So really have something that is going to have some sort of personal connect. Think about each story deeply. Think about each experience deeply.
To reiterate what Lorika said, have your stories in order. And apart from that, like most of the interviews that I had, I did not receive any proper behavioral question, like such as like, what is your most proudest accomplishment, or tell me about a time you faced. I did not have any of the questions like that. Be super cognizant of what you have on your resume. So most of the behavioral questions that I had received was like a follow-up to my tell me about yourself question. So mostly like they would get like really interested in one of the research papers you have mentioned, or like one of your particular experience, and they would be like, how you went about doing that, and you would like talk in detail about actually how you went about doing that, and they would like pick up a detail from that, and like, can you talk more about like how you did this particular thing, and like what were the like the things that, what was the most difficult challenge that you faced in that particular establishing that particular work experience, and something like that. So yeah, like be super cognizant of your what you put on your resume and be on top of it. Yeah,
That's great. I think one of the audience wants to know about the SSN story from Lorik. Do you want to share
I
it?
don't know if I want to bore everybody here, but the gist of it is I decided to go on a day to apply for the SSN when the systems were down. So they sent my application to the Department of Homeland Security, and it went into a backlog for 9 months. Now, the thing is, if it goes into a backlog for 9 months, you can't really intern. So I was looking to pack my bags and leave. But I decided, okay, fine, let's try to solve this differently. I reached out to several people at Duke, like the directors, the president, and all of that, but none of that helped. Then I started tweeting to senators and congressmen. Finally, one person decided to respond back, and then they took up my case. They reached out to Roy Cooper, the governor of NC, who then went ahead and followed up with DHS in Maryland, and then the SSN came back after about 3 months. So yeah, it was a painful story. This is like the highlights of it, but yeah. I was not really applying for internships. I was looking to get my SSN all throughout the fall semester.
That's great, but I think you got some good connects on Twitter through that.
Yeah.
That's awesome, guys. Oops, one of the audience.
I'm so sorry you have to go through this, but I can put you in touch with David Price if you want to.
Okay, that's great. I think we mostly covered most of the things which we wanted to, and probably like we can go through some of the questions the audience have which they have put up on Slido. And yeah, so one thing, I think this is something which is particular to Gokul. Like so if you have founding experience, to what level of immersion do you show, and how do companies take about your experience? Like how do you show that particular experience?
I didn't quite understand your question, Akash. Can you like repeat that if you don't
Yeah,
mind?
yeah, sure. So the question is like, since you are coming with entrepreneurship background, so how do you show that on your resume, as well as like how do you show it to the recruiters and the team? On what level do you actually show?
On my resume, I usually keep it like high level. These are like, I focus on results. So for example, if I had like particularly marketed a product, I talk about the impressions I had. If I had run a marketing campaign, I focus on the CTR rate that I had. And as everyone would say, I keep it like as data driven as possible, as metrics driven in my resume bullets. And in my interview, I make sure that I actually tell the whole story, the inception of it, for each and one of my job experience and what I learned out of it. So yeah, in resume, it's mostly just a highlights reel. And in your interview, in your actual behavioral interview, I make sure that they get the whole story and they get the person that I am trying to project as.
Got it. Perfect. And the next question is about like your experiences, in your internship, like specific to Amazon and Microsoft, like what kind of product you worked with, and how was the overall summer internship, especially coming as an international student? How was it different from your international experience?
I had my orientation for the first 40 minutes on day one, and then the work started. So it was not what I thought an internship would be in terms of at least the orientation. It was pretty stressful, hectic, but I think that is required to really understand how Amazon is moving at the pace it is moving. It was really fast. There was insane amounts of learning. I was there for 3 months, but it felt like I was there for a year. There was definitely a steep learning curve. The sort of a product that I work with, I cannot really go into the details because I signed a non-disclosure agreement with them. But overall, I can say this, that there was immense customer focus, extreme autonomy and ownership. And the fact that you need to not just think about solving a customer's problem, but also think about it strategically. How will this create new business for Amazon? And Amazon is really interested in something like a flywheel, where you can make things efficient, get in more customers, thereby making it more efficient and driving the cost down further, and thus getting in more people and creating a cycle, which is how Jeff Bezos started with initially selling books. So overall, I think though I was at AWS, not exactly at Amazon.com, I worked with their storage team. They were working with a lot of streaming clients like Netflix, Hulu, Disney. I can't really go into the details of my internship, but I can say that the work has been very impactful. You really get to work on problems that where the scale is so mind-boggling that it almost like scares you, and you really think, oh, is this really what an intern does? And you get scared for what is there in store for you during full time, I guess.
So
That's nice. And Gokul,
yeah, in my experience, there has been a lot of imposter syndrome in the first few weeks, because you are out there sitting with like a lot of people who I could see that they're like way smarter, and like they have done a lot of internships before, and this was my first internship in the US. So at least for the first few weeks, there was a lot of imposter syndrome involved. So I particularly interned in an internal organization called Office Product Group. They make the Microsoft 365 suite of products. So I was working on OneNote, Windows application. So there was a lot of trust and of course autonomy with the way that Microsoft treats its interns. So apart from introductions, no one actually called me an intern throughout the 12 weeks. So I was working on the share feature and onboarding experiences for the OneNote across its platform. So whenever they would address me, they would just call me as like the PM for share. Like no one like treats you like an intern, like, and each and every person, let it be the senior most team member or like a junior engineer, they all treat you as like a proper product manager for that particular feature or that particular product. So yeah, and you obviously get to make impactful projects. They did not give me like an intern project to work on. They actually put me on like an actual feature which got implemented, and I was able to actually see that on my laptop, which hit when it hit production. So it was like super fun to actually work on a product that was used by a lot of people and impactful. Yeah.
that's great, guys. And so coming to the next question from the questions what the audience have. So what are some of the softwares the PMs use on a day-to-day basis? What were some of those that you used during your internships, and yeah, just to understand different tools that PMs use on a day-to-day basis.
I think tools are very specific to companies, but it's essentially understanding what are like the basic things that you need to know. PMs write very well. You need to be able to write very well. You need to be able to use Excel very well because you're working with a lot of data. And lastly, you need to be able to write queries. Most probably, as far as I know, in big tech, PMs generally work with relational databases. So writing SQL queries, not NoSQL queries. You may be writing them in certain like verticals or business units, but in general, I think it is writing SQL queries for relational databases. Apart from that, I think it is domain specific. So if you're working with, say, a particular team, you need to be able to understand the tech stack of that team. So getting your hands dirty with that tech stack will essentially help you understand the technologies that you'll be working with in the future, or technologies in that neighborhood of all the tools that you're using. So I think that that is going to be very specific to a particular team and the organization you're working with. But yeah, that's pretty much it. No specific tools as such.
Yep. Even in my experience, like all the tools that you would use, it's very specific for the company. To be honest, with Microsoft, it's very specific for the organization, internal organization that you're working for. So most of the tools for like splitting work and data were mostly internal Microsoft tools. So they make sure to not use external project management and SQL tools or querying tools. So yeah, I guess it's like very subjective to wherever you're interning or wherever you're working as a PM.
Yeah, like essentially it's more like learning the concept. If you understand how to use a project management software like Jira, you can probably use, I don't know what Microsoft has, but they have their own version of project management software, I'm guessing. They don't use Jira.
Yes.
Right? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, they have their own stack. I think they don't use anything. They build everything by themselves, right? Internally, they have their own Cosmos DB instead of HDFS and Hadoop and all of that. But yeah, the point is, you learn concepts, you can easily extrapolate them to different tools. That is more important.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Coming to the next question. So for Gokul, given your 3 weeks of preparation timeline for Microsoft after your first screening round, how did you structure your preparation strategy timeline for these 3 weeks?
As I said, like I reached out to PMs to understand the kind of questions that I would expect. And I made sure I spent like enough time preparing for all these questions. So I tried my best to be disciplined with at least for these 3 weeks. I made sure I spend at least like an hour or two every day to work out on problems that I see on pmexercises.com and just to hone my product sense and product thinking. And just don't stick to like working on like if you're interviewing for Microsoft products alone, you might not know like what kind of questions or what kind of like curveballs that you might get. So I made sure to cover as many edge cases as possible during those 3 weeks, and I tried my best to be diligent and put in at least like a couple of hours every day working on product design, product analytics, and other kind of product questions.
Got it. So one more thing I think which we missed on covering during the session is about the application process altogether. Like especially for the FAANG companies, does referral really matter? How does that work, especially for internship and also for full time? Like, just wanted to know on those.
I guess like I'll go ahead and acknowledge that like things were like a lot more smoother last year than compared to this year. I did not apply with the referral, so I was able to interview with 2 companies and get 2 offers like during my like first couple of semesters. I did not apply for both the companies with referrals. Again, like right now things don't like we are in a bit of like a rough patch, and I guess you could get as much help as possible. But with regards to Microsoft, Again, it's very subjective to the internal organization. I've been told that like they don't actively consider referrals for the internal org that was working on, or that's what like my manager and my superiors have told me. But in other organizations such as Azure or something, they really value if there was like an internal referral. So that is my opinion, and like I guess Lori could add how it's like at Amazon.
Yeah, I think irrespective of whether they work or they don't work, you should make that connection. Overall, it's going to only add something to your network. It's not going to take away anything. With Amazon, referrals are the only way. They're the best way, in fact. I think I had this conversation with Akash about a month ago about how important referrals are. And I can only tell you one thing, that irrespective of whether they work or they don't work, go ahead, make that connection on LinkedIn and try to cultivate that relationship. Don't just do it for the referral, but take active interest in that individual's life. And that will be more important than getting a referral or not. How you would apply to companies would be like this. You have a referral, you know the hiring manager, amazing. You have a referral, apply with the referral. You don't have either, and the job posting is relatively new, just go ahead and apply. Don't wait for the job posting to get slightly older, because by then they've pretty much picked their candidate.
Yep,
Yeah.
that totally makes sense. So the next question is on the grounds of actually how FAANG interviews are different from different product-based companies. Since you have also interviewed with multiple other companies, how did you like see the difference from both of them? Like what were major differences?
To be honest, I don't think there were a lot of differences. I think the interviewing process is pretty standard. There's product design, product analytics, strategy, execution. You're not getting away from that. Just because it's a non-FAANG doesn't mean that it's going to be easier or it's not going to be the same. In fact, for all you know, it might be slightly harder as well, because they might have fewer headcount. They don't have university programs, so it's generally like slightly harder. One thing that you have to understand is the role is very well defined in the industry, even though it's like not as old as the other roles. It's fairly been around for a long time now, so it's very structured in terms of what a PM really does. So the entire recruitment process as well is very structured, and the interview process also is very structured across the industry. So it's pretty straightforward across. They either ask you to write up spec documents or product requirement documents, and then they go ahead with the standard interviewing process, which is product design, product strategy, execution, and analytics.
In my opinion, even I agree that like the interview process is fairly structured across the industry. So I was able to interview and get an offer with eBay. eBay had like, to be honest, their interview was a bit more like difficult. I was interviewing for a specific team which was working on Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies. And they did give me a heads up before, and they wanted to have me like proper knowledge and background regarding that before I actually interviewed for them. So apart from that, the structure of the interviews were fairly similar. Again, it was product design. How would you design? How would you approach this problem? How would you design this particular feature and stuff like that? So it is fairly structured. But like if you were able to get an idea regarding what is the particular team that you're interviewing for, that could add like a lot of value in terms of what you could expect in terms of technicality.
That is again informative for all of us. So my next question is somewhere like, how hard is it for a fresher? We know that you both come from, have experience and then getting into PM. So from a point of view, just getting out of undergrad, how hard is it for a fresher to get into PM? Like, because we spoke about product design, we spoke about system design, and especially about behavioral, where we'll have to talk about our stories, right? So usually when people come with experience, they can relate to their previous work ex and connect the dots and talk about the situations while building the stories. But as a fresher, what exactly should his preparation look like? Does it remain on the same lines as we discussed on this call, or obviously he or she will have to put some extra effort, but what do you suggest for a fresher to break into PM?
I think for internships, people with experience had a disadvantage, if you ask me, because internships are fairly like junior roles. So people straight out of undergrad are more preferred, including people with no experience. And they have very structured programs like APM internships, RPM internships, or rotational or whatever associate product manager internships. When you start to gain slightly more experience, it becomes harder to crack an internship, because for senior roles, they generally don't have internships apart from a few companies here and there. But talking about what an undergrad can do differently, or what a master's student with no experience can do differently, is they have to just cover up the gap of experience. So they can do that by building products by themselves, taking up activities and projects that deal with like focusing relentlessly on the customer. And they can also like start up new initiatives like clubs in their universities, which will show skills like essentially like leadership, like communication, and really being able to pitch an idea and then get some executive sponsorship for it, which is also an important aspect of product management, pitching your feature and then fighting for executive sponsorship and resources. So yeah, that's my take on it.
I guess like as many like extracurriculars which are like super relevant to product management would be like super helpful. Again, as Lorik said, to bridge the gap. So other than that, like make sure that you list your courses, like whatever relevant stuff that you're doing regarding product management, it needs to be there on your resume, and it needs to be reflected wherever your online presence is there. So yeah, when you're casting the net, like that should be wherever your profile or presence is there, make sure that it's like focused towards product management would be like super helpful.
Sure. So quickly, just talking about resume, should it be more quality or quantity? Where should it be more focused when coming to PM? Like, because we know there should be metrics present on the resume. So should it be more focused on quantity? I mean, yeah, quality and quantity is obviously expected from a resume, but where should one concentrate more when coming to PM domain?
I don't think people should just add metrics for the sake of showing metrics. People adding things like, oh, I have found a GTM for $3 trillion market value. You shouldn't be interning or applying for PM roles. You should be applying for CEO positions directly. So don't just add metrics for the sake of adding metrics. You should be writing it to tell a story through your product. Your resume is your product. You're showing it to the recruiter, who is the end user. How would you calibrate for them? Work backwards from there. If you want a framework, it's star minus the ST. So action and what the result is. But just because you have to add numbers, don't go ahead and add numbers. Anyone will catch that lie. And lying is not good. It doesn't fly with anybody.
Yep. Just to reiterate myself, be super cognizant of your resume. Please don't misrepresent. And like whenever you're like forcing a metric in your work experience for like a trained eye, like a technical recruiter, they will like easily see through it. So like, yeah, like try not to misrepresent, and make sure that the data and the metric that you're actually like including there is like relevant. So I've been like reading a lot of resumes, and people just include numbers just for the sake of including it, which has like no connection to the action that I have mentioned at the previous point of the bullet point. So yeah, that's my take.
Yeah, makes sense. So coming to the, like, I think both of you mentioned about how important mock interviews are. How did you go about it? Did you do mocks with your peers? Were there some platforms which helped you? And if you can add some resources there.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of resources out there for this. There's Lewis Lynn's channel, Slack channel, which you can use. There's Stellar Peers, there's Exponent. But don't just keep doing mocks. Do mocks, figure out where the gaps are, and really fix those. And how will you do that? If you have like an accountability buddy who will see that improvement along interviews. You can essentially, when you're reaching out for referrals and creating connections, you can have one close connection to continuously mock with them to see how you're improving over time. See where you stand, see how you've improved, and use the other resources once you're really there, like Exponent or Stellar Peers or Lewis Lynn's Slack channel. I think these three were really helpful. In fact, I think Stellar Peers is the most helpful, but it's fairly for advanced PM interviews. It is very difficult, and they will catch through and like get to know if you're like interviewing for a beginner type PM role. So it'll be hard in the beginning, but I think Stellar Peers is where you'll get the most amazing feedback.
So apart from the resources that Lorik has suggested, like one of the ways that I approached mock interviews is that I just went about looking for peers who already came with product management experience. So I did not like leverage any particular online tool where you like actually mock with like someone, like more like a blind mock interview. I leveraged my connections here at Duke University as well as in LinkedIn. So as I said, like whenever I reach out to PMs and try to talk with them, get a connection, I make sure that I reach back to them, I stay in touch with them. And whenever I'm interviewing for their company or whenever I need like a mock interview from like a seasoned PM, I take like, I book like an hour or 45 minutes in their calendar and work with them and make sure, and before getting back to them for the mock interview, I make sure that I'm progressing somewhere. I don't want to go back and waste their time to give out the same answers. Yeah, that's how I went about with mock interviews.
And really, like when you're interacting with people, just think of how you would solve a problem and who the end user is. That's a mock interview in itself.
Right. Yeah. That totally makes sense. I think final question for the evening, like this is something coming from the folks who are still exploring PM as a career option. Like if you could advise your younger self who is exploring the PM as a career option, what are 3 things you would say to him or her?
What would you say to your younger self exploring the domain PM? If I got that correctly.
Yep, that's right.
Okay. Be very proactive in reaching out to people. Understand that though this job sounds flashy, it's very dirty. It requires you to essentially gain no instant gratification at all. A programmer can submit code, the pipeline will pass, and everything will look all rosy. The product succeeds, the team has succeeded, the product fails, the product manager sucks. One more thing is, I think the ability to essentially just solve problems. That's what a product manager does. And most of this role is just common sense. It's been wrapped up and called PM, but it's actually just common sense.
Awesome.
Yeah, my take on would be like, yeah, it's not like very as complicated as it's made to be. And other than that, like, yeah, like realizing that in most cases, product manager is nobody's manager. You'll need to realize that you are the liaison between a lot of things, and you get there, get your hands dirty to make sure that the product is what the company expects it to be. And yeah, I guess I got only 2. Yeah.
Perfect. I think this was awesome, guys. I think I learned a lot of things. I'm sure the audience have. Thank you so much for taking out your time on a Friday evening. We'll let you guys go and party now. But yeah, thank you so much for taking out your time. And I hope to, connect more for more initiatives with you guys. And yeah, thank you so much.
Always willing to help, and thanks for organizing this and having us.
Thanks for organizing this, guys. Thanks, Akash,
Thanks for
Manish, and
coming.
the rest of the product folks team. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Great
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Uh,
Take
All
care.
right.
I think I can post my LinkedIn if anyone wants it. Otherwise, you can feel
Yeah.
free to search for me on LinkedIn and connect.
Yeah, we'll just quickly paste link.
We'll be shooting an email or a feedback email. In that email, we can mention your LinkedIn as well if you consent.
Sounds great, because I think one of the folks wanted to reach out for their SSN issue. So just
Sure. Cool.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank you so much,
Thanks
guys.
again.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Have a